Wednesday, April 5th. It's the Just Baseball show, and we have the first mailbag of the 2023 season. I'm Aram Layton. He's Peter Apple, and this mailbag is brought to you by BetMGM, which, dude, by the way, the backdrop, you're just flexing on me so hard. I'm in my mom's office at home thinking I'm looking good, but you've got this BetMGM not gambling advice background. Looks like you're in the middle of Wrigley Field with the Ivy. You're just flexing on me.
It does kind of look from my background for those watching on YouTube like I set up a gambling station on Wrigley Field. But the great part about BetMGM right now is they're running a promo code for MLB bets in particular. This isn't for any bet, so that's why it's perfect for our listeners right now. Use code JB200. When you wager $10 on any MLB game, you get $200 instantly. Absolute no-brainer. If you're thinking about putting a bet down on BetMGM, use code JB200 and you get $200 instantly. So if your unit size is $10, you basically have 20 free bets to use. So that's key on BetMGM, and also on Twitch every day, 4:30 p.m. Eastern to 6:30 p.m. Eastern. I'm running the Not Gambling Advice baseball betting stream. Aram came on and gave picks. A bunch of people are going on to give picks, and it's a competition. It's been a blast so far, and it's brought to us by BetMGM. And this is where I stream, and I'm having a pretty damn good time. And it looks good, which is half the battle.
So for the listeners, real quick too, before we get into the mailbag, if you want a chance to win, World Series tickets, there's two things that have to happen. One, Peter has to win the competition, which I think is very likely. And two, the thing that you have total control of, you just have to subscribe to the Twitch stream, right? To the Twitch channel for Just Baseball, right?
Exactly. All you have to do is subscribe to the Twitch channel, and then at the end of it, if I win, World Series tickets is going to one of the subscribers. But the great thing is, if I finish second, a subscriber gets $500 cash. And I know you said that one of the Just Baseball show listeners will end up, if you end up winning. So I'm excited. I think someone that we know, someone that follows our content, will either get World Series tickets or $500 cash prize. It'd be pretty cool if you and I finish first and second. I think that'd be ideal for our listeners.
I would love that. Our listeners just get hooked up. So basically, we're just doing this so that you root for us because we need more support. But how about you get some free World Series tickets or easy $500 there? So definitely support that stream. It was a lot of fun. I went on for the first time and we had a blast. But we're here to answer the questions from listeners, and there were a bunch of good ones. I had a good time fielding them between Twitter and Instagram. It was a little bit of a last-minute mailbag for us. Normally, we'll probably put it out the day before and give you a little bit more time. So if you're wondering, like, man, how'd I miss it? That one's a little bit on us. Peter and I last minute decided, hey, why don't we go for the mailbag this week? Put it up. You guys were amazing enough to get us all of these questions so quickly, but I understand that there's some that may not have seen it in time. We only gave it a couple-hour window. We'll give you more time in the future. But Peter, you texted me specifically that you loved these questions. I tried to, field them from all over, but we're really fortunate to have listeners who are knowledgeable, inquisitive, and have awesome topics to discuss. And we've got 7 different ones that I think are all money in different areas.
I genuinely love our listeners. All the questions that were submitted are so good. And it's so hard to decide, right? Because we get, 50 to 60 on Twitter, another 50 on Instagram, and all of them are good. So it's almost like you put them all in a hat and you just choose whatever comes out. But I'm genuinely so proud that the listeners of the Just Baseball show are so knowledgeable about the game. Like they're so precise. They garner like a great conversation. Really excited for this episode. And I just want to thank all the listeners of the Just Baseball show for displaying your knowledge, because all the questions, like, it's impossible to choose because they're all fantastic.
100%. If we didn't get to you here, we'll try to get to you next time. But the first question came from Jake Kaiser 27 on Twitter, who says, it's clear already through 4 games that the Cardinals pitching is holding back the high-powered offense. Who is on the trade block among the Cardinals outfield and middle infield depth to target an elite starting pitcher, and what pitcher? First of all, before you answer this, Peter, I can't believe we're already doing this again.
I know.
I will say, let's expect probably nothing to happen for a while, but it's a fun conversation to have because this extends beyond the Cardinals, and we want to kind of like way too early ID some guys that might be traded. Last year, like Montes was kind of floated from day one. We had a couple names that we kind of knew we're going to be traded from day one from teams that were pretty much out of contention from opening day. Not as much the case here this year. So, it's going to be a little bit more interesting and more fun to have this conversation and get creative with it. But first, I'd preface, don't expect the Cardinals to do much, but for the sake of the thought exercise and just kind of discussing how they've looked out of the gate, I thought this was a fun question because there's so many layers to it.
So in terms of the Cardinals, I still need to see more from this starting rotation, right? Adam Wainwright started the year on the IL, and he's the perceived number one, right? Miles Michaelis had a tough start. Jack Flaherty threw a 5-inning no-hitter, even though he had 7 walks and 1 hit by pitch. But you look at the final stat line, the Cardinals won, and he ended up having a good start if you just look at the box score. Now, the command was off, but hopefully he can come back and be a 3 starter. Like, I think that's very possible for a guy like Jack Flaherty. He has the talent of an ace, but the downside of a guy who's in AAA. I think they average together and end up being like a 4 or a 3. And then you look, right? Matthew Liberatore is going to come up, a guy who I want to really ask you about because I know that you've been high on him this offseason. But if we're talking about a starter that I've been watching, and of course it's been 1 start, but a guy like German Marquez was very, very good before last season where he got crushed, right? Yeah. But then in his last start, very, very solid. 6 innings, 2 earned runs. He's always been a guy whose ERA is near the 3s on the road and in the 5s at home. He could still be one of those guys where, yeah, he had a really bad year last year, so maybe then he's a little bit cheaper. I could so see a Juan Yepez for German Marquez type of swap. Maybe the Rockies wouldn't even need to throw in more, but I could easily see that happening if the Cardinals are looking for an upgrade. But it's just way too early to say the Cardinals rotation is awful. They're going to ruin the season because you're still without Wainwright. So that's where I'm at. That's a player who I would look around to target, but there are plenty more who I'm sure you have some ideas.
Yeah, and we're, Steven Matz is going to be making his season debut basically after we are recording this because we're recording this, on the 4th, Tuesday in the afternoon. But I do think Steven Matz, if healthy, is a very reliable option, probably better than whatever they're going to be able to get this early in the season. I brought up the question, or I kind of added this question in because I wanted to highlight the fact that the Cardinals are hitting 356 as a team. They have a 167 WRC plus as a team.
Highest in baseball.
So this team rakes. We know how good the defense is. And I think the Cardinals are not going to be worried about the pitching. And that's the big reason why I wanted to bring it up for exactly what you kind of said, until it's a legitimate, like, catastrophic issue, which I think with Liberatore also waiting in the wings, a guy that has really, really impressed me. Fastball is ticked up 2 miles per hour. The curveball is sharper and not as much of that slow looper. He's using a slider off of it now. And even the changeup has gotten better. He looks like a different guy, and he's got the sinker and the 4-seamer, so it's helped him kind of keep the ball in the yard more. Liberatore looks like he could be a big league option for them this year. So I think they're going to let this play out, but I do think that when you look at the Cardinals situation, and this was another reason why I brought this question here, is I don't expect them to make the trade, but Dylan Carlson, I think, is as expendable as ever now. Because when Dylan Carlson wasn't moved last year, that was before Jordan Walker lit up the Arizona Fall League, lit up spring training, and won a job outright. And we talked about it. The big reason why I was afraid of Walker getting on the opening day rosters, I thought no way they bench Carlson and Walker would be a DH. And I don't want my top prospect DHing as he's supposed to be learning the outfield. Not the case. Walker's actually playing a lot of outfield, which is great. I love that the Cardinals are doing that. But that means Dylan Carlson is as expendable as ever. That said, Lars Nootbaar goes down. He's on the 10-day IL. And that's why you don't trade just to trade, because all of a sudden, now you need Carlson. Now you need Yepez. So I think they're going to see how this goes for a couple months. I think Cardinals fans, look, there's going to be times where the rotation is frustrating. But unless you can get a clear-cut upgrade, or it's a deadline low-cost swap for German Marquez, I think they're fine as is. And I don't think that they should go crazy right now, I think Cardinals fans need to breathe. I think you're going to be just fine. But I understand the concerns around the pitching. We always talk about it.
Something that I was thinking about when my head touched the pillow last night, just late night baseball thoughts inside my own brain. I thought if lineups were expanded to 12 players, right? You had 4 DHs or something like that. The Cardinals would win every game because they have the deepest, best lineup in all of baseball right now. Another guy who we haven't mentioned is Nolan Gorman, who's rocking a 335 WRC plus. So he's 235% better than the league average hitter through the first couple of games, through the first week of the MLB season. So he's a guy, like, let's say he has an incredible first half. You could maybe package him and another guy and get an ace. So they have so many ways, but it's not time to panic, right? No. There are other teams where we should consider, all right, they got way more issues than the Cardinals, because the reason the Cardinals are so good is, yes, their weakness is starting pitching, but they still have a great bullpen. They have an elite offense and an elite defense. So when there's 4 units of the game and you're elite in 2 of them, great in 1, and it's not as great in the starting pitching side, you can make moves in order to shore up that pitching, and they will. And it's just, who is it? When is it? The when is probably going to happen in July, not
exactly. And if there's one thing that's very clear with this Cardinals team is they're not going to just make trades to make it. They're not AJ Preller led. Like John Mozeliak's not like that. So look at the Sean Murphy deal, right? They were deep in negotiations. Ultimately, the price wasn't right for them, and they backed away. He ends up going to the Braves. The Cardinals are going to make moves that they think exactly are the right value, and that's it. And that's fine. And that's why the Cardinals are perpetually in contention and very good. The last thing I'll say is Liberatore was one of the only quote unquote top pitching prospects, highly regarded pitching prospects to actually debut well. I mean, we saw Grayson Rodriguez, and we talked about this on the call up. You should definitely go check that out because we broke down all of the starts of all of the top prospects through this debut opening weekend. Brandon Pfaadt struggled. Gavin Stone gave up more runs in his opening day start or in his first start this year than he did in the final 2 months of last season. You had Grayson Rodriguez, Taj Bradley, all look shaky. Liberatore was one of the only high-profile pitching prospects who carved. And I think if he continues to look like that, the Cardinals are going to feel a little bit better about where they're at as well. So I think we got to wait. And I think you and I both agree on that, Peter. And I think Cardinals fans, unfortunately, should power down the trade machine because you're just going to drive yourself nuts.
I think everyone outside of St. Louis is thinking that. It's not just us, but of course you're following your favorite baseball team. You see an immediate hole and you said, how do we change this right now? It's not going perfectly right as we're sitting here. Take a deep breath. Cardinals are really good, and they're going to be really good, and they're going to upgrade pitching. Look at a guy like German Marquez. I think he could impact the team. So now I think it's time for question number 2.
Let's do it. So this one comes from Nick Faber on Twitter. It's Nick_Faber_. What are some hot takes based on overreactions to start the season? We kind of do this anyway, so I figured why not build this into this one because we haven't done it in the last few episodes. And now we've got a full series of kind of whatever we want across the entire major league landscape of just crazy overreactions. So I kick it to you, Peter.
James Outman might be the next great Dodgers outfielder. And of course it's an overreaction, but I just love this guy's swing. I think he's a good defender in the outfield. And the Dodgers always seem to spawn these randos who you may never have heard of before. Maybe you have heard them before, but the Dodgers always squeeze the juice out of some of these guys. And I've just been very impressed with a guy like James Outman. You look at a Dodgers lineup with Mookie, Freddie, and Will Smith, and Max Muncy, of course, and then the bottom of the lineup looks a little weak, but James Outman is extending that lineup, being the outfielder that the Dodgers need. And when we look right now at leaderboards, he's number 3 in F-WAR in all of baseball behind Wander Franco and Adam Duvall. James Outman has a 268 WRC plus, and he's slugging 917. Is he going to do that this year? Of course not. But I do think that he is a very good outfielder. And here's a hot take that he's an all-star this year. Probably won't happen, but there's a hot take for you.
It's not crazy because he doesn't have the most demanding role, right? That's not the guy that you're game planning for. It's not the guy you're worried about in the lineup, but he can burn you. He's fast. You mentioned the swing. He's continued to get better every time we see him. He strikes out a little bit, but he hedges that with walks. Jack has talked about Outman because he got to see him a lot in AAA, and he loves him. And I can see why Jack fell in love with him in AAA and has been hyping him up for a while because all of the things that you just said, this guy's for real. In a platoon of Trace Thompson, part-time in center field with Outman, but then Outman can move all over the outfield as well. He can play center. He can play the corners. This really helps a Dodgers lineup that, is still really good, but the offense hasn't been that great aside from the one crazy game where Trace Thompson hit 3 home runs, and the outfield has some more questions as well. So I think Outman is huge for this ball club.
What's yours?
I'm going to go. Yeah. So I have a few different ones I wanted to approach. One's not enough of an over.
I have one more after. So
yeah, we'll go back and forth. We'll do 2 each.
Perfect.
This was something we kind of touched on the last episode, but the more I've looked at it, like this is kind of a fun overreaction that I think the Rays might have the best pitching staff in all of Major League Baseball, if this is what it looks like. And we just saw the Tigers put up a really good offensive display against, a solid Astros pitching staff. The ABs looked way better. Riley Green went oppo over the train tracks. Like all of a sudden, they didn't look like a totally inept team. I still maintain, and we talked about it, I said, I think it was more the Rays pitching staff being impressive than the Tigers offense being terrible. And, it's only one game after that, but that seemed to be the case there because they put up some good at-bats against a solid Astros pitching staff. I'm just looking at Jeffrey Springs and what he did, and it looks sustainable. Like that was a legit start. It was just disgusting. Shane McClanahan looks 100% healthy, which is the best news. That was the one thing I was concerned about when we were doing our rankings is how is that shoulder holding up? Glasnow is already trending back sooner, I think, than some may have thought he would come back. And then, you even got another just pick up right where he left off, kind of start from Drew Rasmussen, going 6 innings and punching out, 9?
He's like better than McClanahan. He's not actually, but like he's amazing. And
he has starts where he's better.
It's not that far off. Like the breaking ball that he has, the cutter that he has, he is so good. He can strike out anybody at will, but he also induces a ton of soft contact. And he's just a burly man on the mound. I love watching him pitch. Like the more I watch Drew Rasmussen, the more I fall in love. And also shout out BetMGM. Every other sports book had the Rays to win the division around plus 300. They give us plus 350. I pounced and I'm feeling good to win the AL East. It might not happen. Of course, it's way early to tell.
Good value though.
They're on the right track, right? And the Rays, this is so funny. The Rays, they had that easy series against the Tigers. Now they're playing the Nationals. Then they go play the A's. They might go undefeated through the first.
That's what I'm saying. That's why it's a funny overreaction because they actually might have a 0.9 ERA through the first 12 games of the season because of the way that the games match up for them there. What's your second overreaction?
My second overreaction, and this is based off a lot of people's predictions for this player. But I was just so enamored with Dansby Swanson's improvements in Atlanta. And right now, the dude is hitting .588 with a .706 slug to give him a .279 WRC plus. He's put up .4 WAR. He's like in the 11 range in Major League Baseball right now. So my overreaction for Dansby Swanson is he puts up another 6 WAR season because I think the defense is so safe. And man, he's hitting the ball well. His swing looks good. He just, to me, he wasn't a numbers darling because, you look at some of the batted ball data, you look at a fringe arm and you say to yourself, that might have been a shot in the pan. Maybe the Cubs paid too much. I just seriously thought that he is just such a smart baseball player that he knows, his shortcomings and he just works on them in the offseason and improves every single season. So he's already off to a great start. And a lot of people, if I told you at the beginning of the season, Dansby is going to play better than he was with the Braves, everyone would have said, you're nuts. And I may still be nuts, but I just believe in Dansby Swanson on the Chicago Cubs. And I think he will put up another 6 WAR season, solidifying himself as one of the best shortstops in baseball. I think he's just such a good ball player.
I like that. That's a fun one. And I shook off a bad spring and just said whatever and just mashing. So I would love to see that because he got paid.
Facing like the Brewers pitching.
It's not like he's beating
some good pitching too.
Mm-hmm. And also, it wasn't like it was a great environment to hit in Chicago through that first series. It was under city for you. I know with some of these bets. So definitely a fun one there because I don't think anybody would have thought that before the season. But right now, he's only struck out once through 18 plate appearances, and the glove's going to play. And it seems like he's really happy to be in Chicago. So definitely a nice start for him there. I'm going to go with 2 for 1 with 2 rookies because it's very short and very easy. I'm going to go with. First, Miguel Vargas. I think he leads the league in walks. It's going to be really hard to do that when you've got Juan Soto and some of these other guys. But Miguel Vargas has 18 plate appearances. I don't know how many pitches he's seen, but he's walked 9 times, and he has only chased once. He's only swung at one pitch outside the zone. Remember, this is I don't know what kind of voodoo spells he casts on pitchers, because this was a guy that was walking at a 50% clip when the pitchers knew he wasn't swinging. You can't give him credit for that. You can't say, oh, great plate discipline. He wasn't swinging. There's no point. So you can't give him credit for that, but something weird. I don't know what it is. It's not like he has a crazy stance. It's distracting. It's not like he stands on the plate. I don't know what he does, but he casts a voodoo spell. He's already leading the league in walks. He did it when he couldn't swing. And I think he's going to continue to walk at a ridiculous clip.
Voodoo Vargas. I already love the nickname. Makes so much sense. Voodoo Vargas.
And then the other one is kind of building off of something I was saying all offseason, but I didn't have the balls to say before he did a ridiculous, put up a ridiculous display in 4 games. Bryce Terang, rookie of the year in the National League. I was hyping up Terang of the Brewers, a guy that I thought could be a major X factor for them at second base. He hits his first home run of his career. It's a grand slam. He looks exactly like I thought he would defensively at second base. But what's impressing me even more is he's walking a ton too. He's walked up basically a quarter of his at-bats so far, not swinging and missing. Obviously, he's not going to be a guy that hits for a ton of power, but if he starts to flash what he just did, and he's starting to hit the ball as hard as 105 miles an hour, 106, which he's just started to do a little bit more. I have a whole thread breaking him down on Twitter. If you search my @ on Twitter, you can find the whole thread I have of breaking him down. But I legitimately think he could just accumulate a ton of FWAR. And depending on how voters look at it, there's a legit chance Bryce Terang could be a Rookie of the Year candidate and finalist.
I love it.
We'll move on to question number 3. This one comes from probably Joseph Conlin, but he's at Conlin_Joseph on Twitter. What do you think is the main issues with the Phillies? Is it the format of the starting lineup, starting pitcher, or bad bullpen? Hopefully the Phils can turn this mess around soon. So first of all, I put this in here because I think it's so funny that fans are already like, this shit's fucked.
That's why I wanted to do a mailbag so bad, because I wanted to see these overreactions. You should see some of Philly's Twitter. It's like it's over. The season's over.
It's a wrap.
And it's like, go ahead, but I have a point about the Phillies, and maybe I'll just say it now. It's like, what did you expect right now? Not for the rest of the season. What did you expect right now? Suarez is out. Painter is not going to be pitching right now. Bryce Harper's still out. And Rhys Hoskins is out for the year with the leg injury. Like, you had slow.
And you had no time to like accommodate that, right? Like, it wasn't like Hoskins got hurt 3 months ago. It was right before the season. They had to just say, okay, Derek Hall, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we knew the Phillies would start out slow. That was kind of the point, right? Where we said it on the podcast, that while the Phillies have a very good shot of making the playoffs and making another sneaky run, they're probably going to start out slow. Then Suarez is going to come back. Painter's going to come back. And Harper's going to come back. And then they're going to roll. We knew that.
Yeah.
Look, have you seen Trey Turner? He's playing awesome.
Yeah.
It's the bottom of the lineup that can't hit anything right now. And the pitching just hasn't been there against a Rangers team that just straight up ambushed them. Do I think Zach Wheeler is going to be a 4-inning guy giving up 6 earned? No. Do I think Nola is going to be that guy? No. You're going to be fine. Can you relax, Philly?
Yeah.
Every single one of your teams makes the Super Bowl or NBA Finals or World Series, and yet you start 0-4, the season's over. Take a chill pill. You'll be fine.
Yes, thank you. They will be just fine. Again, the Texas Rangers are like, they have juggernaut ability, right? Like, we know that when everything's clicking for that team, there can be a problem. Are they going to be good over 162? We don't know. We're a little unsure. But we know that when things are going right for the Rangers, they can roll right over you with the talent that they have, both on the mound and at the plate. It happens. Sometimes you start the season and the other team was a little bit more ready than you were. But to answer like the question of kind of what's up with the Phillies, like, what did you really see in those 4 games? Other than the fact that, to me, it just seemed like a lineup that was shaken up, right? It was like you shook up a snow globe and then had to just toss it out there because everything's kind of chaotic right now. The pitching you mentioned, some of the guys got like ambushed a little bit. It wasn't Zach Wheeler's best start ever. Honestly, the stuff was good though. He still struck out a bunch of dudes and he just wasn't totally sharp. Overall though, like, I really don't see anything that bad. Obviously, you would have liked to see a better debut from Taijuan Walker. Obviously, Arenado wasn't his best, but like, we're talking about pitchers all over the game, kind of battling command issues. shaking off the cobwebs. And these are three vets, and Nola, Wheeler, and Walker, that, maybe just might be adjusting a little bit slower than others to the pitch clock. Remember, Walker pitching in the World Baseball Classic as well. So, we'll see how it goes, but I'm not very worried about this rotation, at least with those three guys. And I'm not very worried about the lineup. They just have to tread water like they did last year. If they can hang around 500 by the time Bryce Harper comes back, they will be just fine. And talk about a team that's not worried about making, cost-effective moves, right? Like not worried about making a move that, we might be giving up too much. Dave Dombrowski doesn't give a shit. He wants to make his team better. Yeah. They will do that. The Phillies will be fine. Will they win the division? I don't know. Probably not. But they will. All they got to do is win a wild card, and they'll be fine.
So 2 losses. So we're recording where it's Matt Strahm today against Domingo Germán, right? So we don't know what's going to happen in that game, but the Phillies could easily win that game because Domingo Germán sucks. But in game 3 on Sunday Night Baseball, the Phillies put up a 292 expected batting average. The Rangers put up a 204 expecting batting average. The Phillies were 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position, and they scored 1 run. The Rangers were 1 for 1 with runners in scoring position, and they won 2-1. That was a game where the Phillies should have won, but just the batted ball luck was not on their side. That's baseball. That's why the game is not played on a computer, and that's why we love it. It's not scripted. Anything could happen in a format like that. Bailey Falter looked good against that great Rangers lineup, which is a big positive for the Phillies. The bullpen looked good. The bats just didn't come through that day with runners in scoring position. So that game, of course, my not gamblers know that the Phillies were due for a loss after Sunday Night Baseball. The ultimate system is fading the team that has to travel from Sunday Night Baseball. You finish the game at 10, 11 at night. You're tired. You got to fly on a plane. You're probably, I don't know if it happens to you, sometimes you get constipated. Right? When you're on a plane and you're flying late night and you don't have good enough sleep, sometimes you're just not yourself. Now, I didn't need to use that language.
The Phillies are constipated. Is that why they're 0-4?
I think they're constipated right now.
Okay.
It seems like they're puckering. Doesn't it kind of seem like they're puckering a little bit? But in all actuality, the system is fading that road team off Sunday Night Baseball. They had to travel after playing a really late night game. Then they go to New York and they face Nestor Cortez Jr. in an interleague matchup where they haven't really faced him. They still got 7 hits. They just weren't able to score the runs, and they lost. Taijuan Walker didn't have a good start. They might win today, and then Phillies fans are back. Like, it's just like you had 2 unfortunate losses and really fell into a system. And then the other ones, like your 2 best pitchers got killed. That won't happen often. I would almost venture to say those were going to be their 2 worst starts of the season because they're both awesome. So I think the Phillies are totally fine. They're a team that I want to start betting on because I guess it's over in terms of Phillies fans.
Remind me that first series, was that in Philly or Texas?
No, it was in Texas. So it's the road team.
Hosed.
Exactly.
They got fucking hosed by this.
They got hosed.
Not only do you have to start on the road in Texas, then go to New York on the Sunday night game, like you mentioned, which is always a letdown following up. The fact that you have to also go to New York and play against the Yankees, that's just a bad, unfortunate scheduling situation. What's so funny to me is the Mariners are 1-4. Not a peep from their fans. Maybe we're in the wrong circles. I haven't heard a word from any Mariners fans just losing their shit. Even the Blue Jays, their fans are a little rabid, especially with us.
They're just mad about the pitching, but they know their team is good. It's like the Phillies. Like, have some confidence.
Yeah.
Have some confidence in your ball club. You just went to the World Series. Remember what the Bengals did last year in the NFL after they went
it was
to the
over.
Super Bowl?
It was a wrap.
And then they went 0-2, 0-3 to start the season, or weren't covering, or just looked like trash. Like, it's a World Series hangover. Should happen. Yeah. You'll be fine. Yeah.
They'll be just fine. And I hope we gave some peace of mind to Phillies fans.
Just
real quick before we get to the final 4 questions, a quick note from our friends at So Rare, which is a free-to-play fantasy game that I have been thoroughly enjoying. So I talked about this with Jack, and actually I want to be very transparent about how I'm learning and what I'm doing in these So Rare games. So basically, for those who might not have heard the segments we've done in the past, free-to-play fantasy game, you draft your players and you put together a lineup. And then based on how your lineup performs, you can win different prizes like VIP experiences, tickets to ball games, and even merch. But also, if you don't come in first, I came in 403rd out of like 14,000. I won a really solid Francisco Lindor card, which I could now put into my lineup for this week. So now I swapped out like Jonathan India for Francisco Lindor because my lineup did well last week. And so it's all the same players I drafted from before, but every week, if you finish pretty well, you get a reward and you can plug them into your lineup and keep leveling up. The one thing I learned is that I started Hayden Wesneski last week in my lineup, but he didn't pitch that week, and it's week to week competitions. So that would have probably put me in like the top 100. That was what I learned. So make sure when you're building your lineups that the pitcher is pitching that week, because it is week to week competitions. And it was something that didn't cross my mind, but I've got Wesneski for this week and he's throwing as we're recording this in a couple hours. So it's really fun. It's free to play on the baseline. And then if you want to get to like higher stakes stuff, you can continue to win rewards and try to get up to the higher stakes that way, or you can buy rare cards and build a lineup that way as well. It's all really fun. And of course you can sell those cards later too, and then buy others and keep going from there. So I've really enjoyed it so far. Some people have DM'd me the lineups at So Rare that they've put together, which is a lot of fun. And I hope that they're enjoying it. I've been given as much feedback on lineups as I can. And yeah, man, I've really been enjoying it. And my contest this week, I've got Acuna, Corbin Carroll, Wesneski, Lindor, Tristan Casas, Phil Bickford. You got to have one reliever. I went low budget. Bickford was good yesterday. And then Ohtani, but Ohtani's not going to throw this week. So I swapped him out for Reed Detmers, who looked pretty good yesterday.
Two things. The link to download is in our episode description. So you can play fantasy baseball all year long with us for free. And if you want to buy cards, make your team better, I highly recommend it just because it's a blast. Point number 2, transparency is a big point on this podcast. And I finished in the 4,000s. I got fucking crushed. I didn't win shit, dude. I had Wheeler. I had Sandy. Spent all my money on them. My hitters didn't do anything, and I got freaking creamed. So, yeah, I didn't win shit because I finished like in the middle of the pack of 12,000 entries. So, yeah, for transparency's sake, I got freaking reamed, but I'm due for a bounce back this week. I'm due, right?
Right? You keep those cards. You told me before we recorded, you asked me, like, how do you feel about Sandy? Like, for your sake, I hope pretty good. Again, another guy that's
so much
pitching.
Money on that piece of shit.
It was most of your budget. So the way that it works is, the best, you have 120 points. The better the player, the more points he costs, up to 10. So obviously Sandy was probably 10 points. But I got a guy like Corbin Carroll who was like 5 or 6 points, and that's been a steal. He went yard yesterday. That gave me, a ton of fantasy points for my team. So that's kind of how that works, and it makes it a lot of fun. And again, you can enter those competitions. The minors competition is the one I'm in right now. But if you have any questions, feel free to DM me. I'll try to answer anything I got there. And again, the link is in our description for So Rare MLB so that they know that we sent you. But it really is a lot of fun. I like that it's free to enter so that if you do really enjoy it, then you can decide if you want to start, building the, pay to play lineups, but you don't have to pay to play, which is the cool part about it. And you can climb your way through the ranks and have a lot of fun doing it and potentially win some big time prizes and VIP experiences.
Question number 4.
Number 4 here is from Justin P. White on Instagram. Which contender are you most worried about after the 1-2 series? Again, I love these questions, bro, because no matter what, we probably sound stupid, but it's so fun. So I'll kick it to you first. I will just highlight this, and I'll set the scene here. I'll list all of the teams that are in last place presently. The Toronto Blue Jays, the Philadelphia Phillies, the Chicago Cubs, the Detroit Tigers, the Seattle Mariners, and then the Rockies and D-backs are tied for last. Again, we've played 4 games. Doesn't really matter. Some have played 5, so oh no. But it's still really funny and fun. So the floor is yours.
I would say the team I'm most concerned about is the Blue Jays, but I'm not that concerned, right? But just because I am very nervous about the pitching. Because Jose Barrios was a guy who it's like, well, he can't get any worse, and then looked terrible against the Royals. Alek Manoah was a guy who was due for regression. In his first start, He gave up a ton of runs against the Cardinals. Kevin Gausman looked great, but that day the Blue Jays bats didn't show up, right? Chris Bassett, that was my gut pick for a guy who's just going to regress.
That was a good gut pick.
And he did not look good. He was giving up an incredible amount of hard contact.
Velo was down too.
We're going to see Yusei Kikuchi tonight, who's been much better in spring training. His velo has been up. So maybe he's a guy who comes back. But overall, when I look at all the contenders, like, I ain't worried about the Mariners. They lost a couple of close games. They lost on some bullshit errors. Like the Astros, Altuve's not back and they just don't look quite like themselves yet. But the White Sox played pretty well, so I don't really care. Dodgers look good. Mets look fine. Cardinals look good. Like, everyone else looks pretty good. So if I had to choose, it would be the Blue Jays because my concerns about their starting pitching are showing early. But that doesn't mean that they're going to continue, right? My gut pick could be Chris Bassett, and then he rattles off a bunch of great starts in a row. Alek Manoah could say, screw your regression, and then rattle off a bunch of great starts in a row. So for the question's sake, I'm saying the Blue Jays, but I'm not really that nervous. I'm just, if I had to choose.
Yeah, it's like I almost can't choose one. Like it's really hard. We just made a whole case about why,
no, but the best part about this question is that you could spin whatever narrative you want.
Correct.
because Miguel Vargas has a 700 WRC plus right now.
Yeah, and he's walking at a 98% clip. Yeah. So the contending team I'm worried about is the A's, man. I looked at the lineup and I forgot where everybody went. Where'd Sean Murphy go? Where'd Matt Olson go? That totally confused me. But no, I'm looking across the league right now. Obviously, the Twins are off to a great start, so you can't say anything there. The White Sox, I would say the White Sox. What it kind of boils down to for me is that I feel like things have kind of went right for the White Sox so far. Some of the guys I'm expecting them to not throw well, like Clevenger, Giolito. Obviously, Kopech didn't throw well, but some of the guys I was expecting not to throw well kind of threw well. Some of the bats that I was very nervous about have gotten off to good starts. I wasn't even nervous about Grandal. I was positive he wouldn't hit. He's been swinging it a little bit. You got Machado swinging it. I'm just kind of waiting for those guys to come back to earth or just kind of things to go wrong. And maybe I'm just jaded from watching the White Sox for so long and just seeing things fall apart, but it seems like things are going well for them and it still doesn't feel good. So I'm just kind of waiting. It's a gut feeling, but I'm just waiting for the wheels to fall off. I'm not hoping for it. I kind of like the White Sox. I got nothing against them, but it just, something feels like it's all about to fall off. And I just, something about this team, I just don't enjoy watching them.
I don't have a good feeling about them either. And it's hard to explain, right? It's just like a team that they don't play baseball well, but they win, if that makes sense. Like when I watch Cardinals games, I'm like, that's a team that plays baseball.
Totally.
Like, they know what they're doing. Like even in a loss, I'm like, yeah, shit happens. Like that's a well-rounded baseball team. Yeah. When I watch the White Sox, I'm like, just because they hit 3 2-run home runs and won 6-4, like they almost lost the game. It
doesn't feel sustainable. It doesn't feel
almost like, and I don't mean to come after you, but the Marlins, they won that game against the Mets, and I'm like, they play losing baseball that day, but won the game. Like, it's just like, I'm not saying the White Sox are the Marlins, but I am saying there's like different forms of playing baseball. And when you watch good teams play and win, and then you watch like the White Sox play and win, it just feels different, even though it's still win in the column.
It doesn't feel sustainable, and that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm like waiting for like Elvis Andrus to just be stuck at 1,999 hits for like 4 months now. Like I don't know. There's just something about this team, man.
Shout out Elvis Andrus, though. I mean, he's had a great career.
I love him, but I don't know if I love him this year.
I see that.
We move on to the next question here, which comes from S Kravitz 13 on Instagram, and man, is this a good one? Start bench cut: Nolan Arenado, Manny Machado, and Jose Ramirez. The way he put it was Arenado, Manny, J-Ram. But start bench cut those guys, Peter.
So if I were to start bench cut Nolan Arenado, Manny Machado, and Jose Ramirez, it's impossible. And any answer that you give is probably the right answer. But my answer is, I'm starting Manny Machado. I still think he is the best combination of offense at the plate and defense. I do. Nolan Arenado is the best defender of them all, but I still prefer Manny Machado's bat slightly. And I don't think the defensive difference is that big. I really don't. I think Machado is one of the best defenders at third base in Major League Baseball. And I think Arenado is in the top 3. And I think Machado's like top 5 or 6. And I think Machado is the better bat than Arenado. J-Ram is the worst defender of the 3, but he's the best base runner. And you can make arguments sometimes that he's the best hitter. But I think the best combination is Manny Machado. So I'm going to start Machado. And then the last one is impossible. I think I would bench Arenado and cut J-Ram. And again, I don't think there's a wrong answer here, but the way I rank them in my top 100 is Machado, Arenado, J-Ram. They were all top 20 players. But if I had to start with one, like, I have to go with Machado, and then Arenado has just earned it. And like, I love J-Ram to death, but I would rank them Machado, Arenado, J-Ram. So then that means I'm cutting Jose Ramirez, which is an insane thing to say.
Here's just to show you how fucked up the question is. Jose Ramirez finished 4th in MVP voting last year in the American League. Nolan Arenado finished 3rd in MVP voting in the National League, and Manny Machado was the runner-up in MVP voting last year. So, this is crazy. So and this is more of like a personal preference thing than anything, right? Like, there is no right or wrong answer, as we kind of noted. Before last year, I'm probably cutting Arenado just because of the doubts of the offensive ability. Not that anyone didn't think he could hit away from courses. Would he be a 900 OPS guy away from course? Because the year before that, he was at 807. The fact that this dude has won a Gold Glove, and I know it's a little bit of an arbitrary award, but not really with him, right? He's won a Gold Glove every single year he's been in the major leagues. He made another disgusting play. By the way, if you follow our Twitter, Just Baseball on Twitter, like, it's just BB_media on Twitter. Yes, we got the highlights there. That Arenado highlight was gross. If Arenado's swinging it like this, man, like with his glove, I really think he might be the best defensive third baseman of all time. I have bias towards Arenado. I love him. I think I'm going to start Arenado just because I love him so much. And I think he found something offensively, like in this second phase of his career, to really produce away from corners. 891 OPS last year was fantastic. For reference, Machado 898, which is just absolutely nuts. And J-Ram was 869, like a bum.
Yeah. Terrible.
So this is where it's interesting, because you kind of laid it all out, right? And with J-Ram, you mentioned the base running ability, right? This guy's stolen almost 200 bags in his career. He might hit the 200 stolen base mark this year with the new rules. And the new rules, like, there's only one guy of this group that's really going to benefit from that from a stolen base perspective. And it's J-Ram. He's 2 for 2 on the stolen bases. He's a switch hitter who puts the ball on the ground more than both of them. Already 2 for 2 in 5 games on stolen bases. I feel like I should be arrested for cutting any of these guys.
No, that's why it's like you could literally start bench cut and make an argument for any order, and I would agree with you.
Yeah, so I'm going starting Nolan Arenado, I'm benching Jose Ramirez, and I'm cutting Manny Machado, which
that's hilarious.
I could like throw up right now. I'm like anxious inside. Like I feel gross.
Yeah, that just goes to show the difference that these 3 baseball players are some of the best in the world, and I'm starting Machado and Arm's cutting Machado. That's the difference. It's personal preference. It's, what do you value more? And I value. And in my opinion, and this might not even be true, this is just my opinion, that I think Manny Machado has the second best glove and the best bat out of the 3. So I combine those and I say he's the best. But J-Ram's the clearly better base runner, like by far. And he's still got a great glove and he's an amazing bat. And Arenado has the best glove and is almost there with the bat. It's like, whatever.
I think really it's whether I think what it boils down to for me is whether you buy that Arenado can duplicate last year's OPS, because if he's
going to be an 850 OPS guy,
then at that point it's like, holy shit, these guys are all within 1% of each other.
Yeah,
Really good question.
Maybe bench J-Ram, cut Arenado. I don't know. No, I can't cut Arenado. I just can't. I just can't. I'm sorry. I can't.
I think that's illegal.
Yeah, I can't.
No, but that's a great question. Thank you for that, Mr. Kravitz. We'll go to the final two questions. This one's from at SimonWalton.nyc, City Boy on Instagram. Dark horse rookie of the year pick in each league after 5 days of games. So I brought up Bryce Turang earlier because I don't even think he's dark horse because he's legitimately raking through the first 4 games. So I'm interested to see, like, is this something that we've pretty much given out those picks. Have you seen anything that has maybe swayed you one way or another? Have you thinking anything different on the rookie of the year potential here? Or are you kind of just feeling the same as you felt in the last episode?
James Outman is a guy who I guess is a dark horse, but he's 3rd in Major League Baseball for WAR. Like, it's hard to find a dark horse when like the dark horses themselves are starting out so hot. But like, we can't forget about Corbin Carroll. Corbin Carroll is slashing 333, 333, 556 to give him a 141 WRC plus. He's got a home run. He's got 3 steals. Like, he was my runaway rookie of the year, and he's already started off and been one of the best hitters in the Diamondbacks lineup. So he's just still my rookie of the year. But I've been so impressed with James Outman in the National League that I said, yeah, maybe he could do it. But I still just think it's Carroll, right? So that, I guess, is the dark horse. That's why it's a tough question, because it's like, I'm not going to pick a dark horse that started off really badly, and they're not a dark horse if they started off really well, because it's easy. Yes. So that's why the question is so good, but it's so difficult.
Yeah, and I would love to answer it like right after this Wisniewski start, because I think that's one I could follow up on that pick earlier. But on the National League side, I'd probably go Joey Wiemer. Did you see the throw he made the other day?
Arm. You said it yourself, and it was on a line bounce, perfect, nailed him at second.
Like almost no step, like threw it flat
out of the corner of the stadium.
The old recoil. That was badass. So Joey Wiemer, some background real quick. I know we've talked about it. Like, he plays like his hair is on fire. He has one of the more unorthodox swings and setups. He struck out 30% of the time in Double-A in 2022 in 84 games. I really feel like he was kind of ready to be promoted and just was kind of going stale there and just like kind of lost focus, because then he gets brought up to Triple-A in the middle of a perceived slump. And in 43 games, cuts his strikeout rate in half and raises his walk rate by 3%. His contact rate skyrocketed, and he hit 287, 368, 520 in Triple-A. And it's worth noting, like, we have park factors for the major leagues. We don't, we have it a little bit in the minors. I don't think a lot of people like are able to follow it and monitor. Triple-A Nashville is 10 times harder to hit in than Double-A Biloxi, which has a jet stream straight out to left, and his power numbers went up. This guy's got monster power. He's got the ability to make highlight reel throws and plays in the outfield, and he's in a beautiful stadium to put up crazy power numbers. Joey Wiemer could catch lightning in a bottle and hit 30 home runs as a rookie, and that's what it's going to take to probably beat Corbin Carroll. So that's my dark horse on that side. But also, Spencer Steers looked really good out of the gate as well. So that's a name to watch. But I think that's probably my dark horse in the National League is Joey Wiemer here.
I like it. And I guess like a dark horse, because I was like, all right, who's a rookie that's getting a lot of playing time, who hasn't started off that hot, but when I watch them, I'm like, all right, I see something in there. Spencer Steer is a guy who's obvious. I've been on him since he debuted, ever since he won me a bet. And I'm just like, this guy's so gritty. I love him forever. He's got a 200 plus WRC plus. But Esteury Ruiz, I think, looks pretty solid, right? 102 WRC plus, had made some fantastic plays in the outfield for the A's. And I find it funny that they were willing to part with Pache, moving Laureano to a corner, because they really want Esteury Ruiz to play center. He's not the Kevin Smith pick that I gave out last year, who just sucks, and I bet on him at 75-1 because he's getting playing time. Like, Esteury Ruiz, if he plays a full season and gets on base enough, could be a big stolen base threat. Not sure that he can do so. He hasn't shown a ton at the plate so far, but he's a guy where I'm like, all right, if everything goes right, I can see it. So for the question in itself, Esteury Ruiz on the Oakland A's is a guy who I'm like, okay, I can picture that. Will it happen? No. Can I picture it? Absolutely.
He's hitting the ball harder than he ever has, which is a great sign. And if he gets on, like you mentioned, with these new rules, he could steal 45. He stole 75 last year. By the way, your boy Kevin Smith, it's the PCL, but he's homered dating back to last year 14 times in 31 games.
I knew it. It was always
I knew it. He just was doing it in the wrong league. I don't know why he's doing that. My one other
I was a year early.
and a wrong league, but it's okay. But I thought that was pretty funny. He had 3 the other day. The one guy that I mentioned in our preview episode when we did all the odds on BetMGM and when we were kind of giving out our picks there, and I think he's been off to a great start, is Logan O'Hoppe, catcher with the Angels. Like he's going to play every day. He's swinging it well. He's a good catcher. If that team's good, like that guy's going to have a strong case as long as somebody else isn't running away with it. You know, in the American League, of course, we kind of expect Gunnar Henderson to run away with it. Now that Volpe's getting everyday reps, he's going to be tough to beat as well. And Yoshida as well is going to be tough to beat. So the dark horses are tough. And I think even Colas could be considered a dark horse, but it's just one of those things where it's going to be so hard to dethrone the top guys. And I think that's already been pretty clear out of the gate.
Absolutely. Last question.
Last question from Brian Gross 17 on Instagram. What teams do you think will go after Corbin Burnes after this season? Or do you think the Brewers could possibly offer an extension? I'll answer the latter real quick, and then we'll kind of float through teams. I think that a lot has been made of Corbin Burnes' frustration because of what he said. A lot of players have probably felt worse about their team situation and didn't, have that slip in a comment and still ended up signing with the team. While I think it's unlikely that it happens, I wouldn't rule it out completely, an extension with the Brewers, just because of what he said. I know the arbitration aggravated him, but here's the thing. You can mend that. That's a salvageable relationship bump there. So while I do think it's more likely he goes elsewhere, I'm not going to just totally rule out an extension because, the Brewers and Corbin Burnes didn't get along after arbitration. If this team plays well this year, if they compete for the division, they make the playoffs and they have a nice little stretch, that winning seems to cure all. So I wouldn't totally rule that out. But that said, the meat of this question is what other teams could you see maybe pursuing him? Because he's not going to be cheap.
So I really thought about him leaving because, to your point, I think you make a lot of really good points. So I'm not ruling it out, but I do think it's unlikely that he returns.
Yes.
Because I'm thinking if I'm Corbin Burnes and I'm going to the table and I put up another season where I'm top 5 in NL Cy Young voting and I'm incredible and the Brewers don't make the playoffs, which I think is a much more likely scenario, he goes, all right, I want some of the most money in Major League Baseball because I'm one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. I'm arguably the best. If you look at WAR totals, if you look at ERA, he ranks up there with anyone, and he's going to be walking into his prime seasons being like, I want $200 million. I want $300 million. And the Brewers are going to be like, what? Our whole pay, like, no shot we're doing.
They're going to go buy.
Like, all right, I'm gone. That's how I just view the situation unfolding. So I thought of a couple teams that I think would be incredibly interested. All 29 other teams should be interested, but there's a couple I keyed in on. Aaron Nola will be a free agent soon, and the Phillies haven't offered him an extension. I assume there was extension talks, but nothing's been agreed upon. I wonder if the Phillies let him walk and then ultimately sign Corbin Burnes. Of course, they're going to need to give Zach Wheeler money, but I thought, okay, that's a Dave Dombrowski type where he sees Corbin Burnes on the open market and says, we'll do whatever you want to get him. Of course, I could see the Dodgers. Totally. Feels right up the Dodgers' alley to just go snipe one of these guys. You can't rule out the Padres either, right? Because let's say, we haven't heard much about a Soto extension. Maybe they end up letting him walk. It would be insane. It would be insane. I would argue against it, but I don't even know if I've seen weirder, but it's something that could happen. So the Padres should definitely be in the running. The Yankees are, of course, always going to be in the running for a big-time free agent like this. But the team I narrowed in on the most, and it depends how they do this season, but he kind of feels like a Red Sox.
Thank you. That was mine.
He kind of feels like a Red Sox, right? Their pitching has not really unfolded. They spent money on the offense, and they really don't have anyone coming up the pipeline outside of Brian Bayo. A Corbin Burnes signing for Chaim Bloom would inject so much into that clubhouse. And, let's say they win 80 games this year, which is entirely possible. They could say, all right, we're close. We just need to get pitching. and Corbin Burnes is on the market, we haven't made a big splash in a while. I could totally see the Red Sox. That was the team I keyed in on the most.
That was so funny because we do not collaborate before these episodes when it comes to like this kind of stuff. Red Sox are my number one. I got a number two coming up in a second, but I'll even take it a step further on the Red Sox. Chris Sale, because remember, this would be for 2025, right? Because you have this year and then next year where Burnes is under control. He's a free agent for 25. Chris Sale is owed 27.5 this year, 27.5 next year, and then a vesting option for 20 million. So either it's going to be 7.5 million less, which is a nice chunk of change, even if the option does vest. And I'd venture to say there's a good chance that option doesn't vest. I don't know exactly what the criteria is, but based on how he's looked, there's a chance it might not. So they're either clearing up 7.5 or 27.5 from Chris Sale and can instantly plug in an ace. They also are clearing up money from Kenley Jansen, because he's 2 years at 32, 16, then nothing there in 2025. That's a good chunk of change. Chris Martin is 9.5 coming off the books in 2020. They've got like almost 50 something million dollars coming off the books, actually closer to 60 potentially if you add up everything else when they kind of enter that free agency for Corbin Burnes. That's the splash to make. Another one is the Giants, right? The Giants have been looking to make the splash for whatever reason. They have not been able to. And that rotation, they piece it together. And we know that they always find a way to get the most out of pitchers, right? They always get the undervalued guys. But at the same time, I'm sure they'd love to have an ace at the top, to maybe pair with Logan Webb and then build out from there. That would really help jumpstart. And I think these are two similar teams, two teams with decent pieces, but not enough depth, not enough well-roundedness, and just they're kind of stuck in the middle. And I think that's exactly where the Giants are too. I could see one of those two teams finally making that big deal and going to get one of these two guys, or sorry, going to get Corbin Burnes.
That was a good question because he is going to be such a coveted free agent. Before we go, quick story. I want to shout out a reliever on the Yankees. His name is Ian Hamilton, and Ian Hamilton undergone surgery on his face a couple of years ago. When he was on the White Sox, a foul ball hit him in the face and he underwent facial reconstruction surgery. The Yankees signed him and he threw last night and looked really good. He throws this weird slider changeup thing and it doesn't even like really register on Baseball Savant. I was following on the Baseball Savant. It's just like a new pitch.
IDK.
It's a slider profile, but it fades like a changeup. It's not Devin Williams-esque, but it's that you don't really know what the pitch is in that sense. And I thought it was so cool to see him last night, and he pitched really well after undergoing facial reconstruction surgery with the White Sox. And that was years ago, and he's finally back. I watched the post-game presser. I was just like, that is such a cool story. So shout out Ian Hamilton.
No, thanks for sharing that. That is super dope. I did not see that. I can't imagine. I caught a liner off the head when I was 15. Got a concussion, had a fracture right here, like right above my eye. And when I was pitching, and that was like the scariest thing was getting back on the mound. I didn't need facial reconstructive surgery. I got better pretty quickly. And the first time getting back on the mound, that was incredibly intimidating. And that wasn't with a big leaguer, that could hit it 500 miles an hour, 60 feet, 6 inches from me. So that's an awesome story. Hope he has continued success there. That'll do it for this Just Baseball show. You know where to find all the links. Make sure to check out Peter's live show where I'll be going on from time to time, trying to put up a winning record this year. Started 1-2. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, Peter is going to be putting up a winning record all year long. Also, check out the call up. Check out all of our other podcasts that you can see, as well as our website where we're turning out a ton of articles there. Definitely download or go to So Rare, and the link is in our description to go check that out. And if you're in one of these states that allows you to, use that free bonus with BetMGM, which is also linked in our description as well. Peter, any final thoughts?
The code is JB200. Wager $10 on any MLB game. Remember, it's for MLB, so it's right up our alley. Wager $10, use code JB200, and you get $200 free instantly. Get your Just Baseball merch. It's the best way to support this podcast. You can find that in the link tree with all the other podcasts on the network. And with that, thank you, everybody.